The fluorescent lights flickered in the empty corridor as Trevor Walsh tightened the last fitting on the burst pipe. 11:30 on a Tuesday night, 15th floor of Hamilton Tower, executive country, where men in $1,000 suits made decisions that changed lives. He was just the plumber they called when things broke after hours, invisible as the pipes behind the walls. Trevor was reaching for his toolbox when the scream tore through the silence, raw, terrified, then nothing. Dead silence. It came from the executive restroom down the hall, the one with Vanessa Crawford's corner office 20 feet beyond it. His phone buzzed. Ruby's goodnight text from Harris's place. 7 years of fighting to keep her fed, safe, stable. 7 years of keeping his head down, staying invisible. The hallway stretched before him like a canyon. Behind that restroom door, someone was being hurt. Walk away, and he stays a father. Walk forward, and everything shatters. His knuckles whitened around the wrench. Some choices destroy a man either way. Trevor's worn work boots echoed in the corridor as he moved toward the restroom door. 7 years of keeping his head down, staying invisible in buildings like this. But that scream still rang in his ears, the kind of sound that meant someone had run out of options. Ruby's face flashed through his mind, her gap-toothed smile and wild curls. She was 7 and still believed her dad could fix anything. What would she think if he walked away? The door swung open. The scene inside froze like a photograph. 2 men in expensive suits, one holding a woman against the marble countertop, while the other clutched a stack of papers. The woman, Vanessa Crawford, he recognized her from the lobby directory, had one arm twisted behind her back, her blouse torn at the shoulder. Her eyes met Trevor's, wide and desperate. The man holding her, Brett Morrison, recovered first. Young, polished, with the confidence of someone never told no. "Wrong floor, buddy. Move along." Trevor didn't move. He stood in the doorway, wrench in hand. The other man, Scott Hendricks, shifted nervously with his papers. "I said, move along." Brett's grip on Vanessa tightened. She winced. "Let her go." Trevor's voice came out rough. Brett laughed. "Do you know who you're talking to? My father owns 40% of this company. One complaint from me, and you're done. Think about that before you play hero." Every word landed like a punch. Brett was right. Trevor was one complaint away from losing everything. Ruby's school fees, the rent, food. But Vanessa's eyes met his again, forming words she couldn't say aloud. "Please." Trevor's fingers tightened on the wrench. "I'm going to say this one more time. Let her go." Brett released Vanessa with a shove and moved toward Trevor. Trevor stepped forward, put himself between them. Not violence, just a barrier. "You've made a huge mistake," Brett hissed. "Do you know what we were doing here? Conducting business, and you just assaulted me." He raised his voice. "Scott, call security. We have an intruder who attacked us." Trevor felt the trap closing. "You were forcing her to sign something. That's assault." "Proof?" "Because I have proof that you broke in with a weapon." Brett gestured at the wrench. The door burst open. Building security. 2 guards. Brett's face transformed into fear. Thank God. This man came in with that wrench, started threatening us. Frank, the older guard, looked at Trevor with understanding. He'd seen 1,000 situations like this. "That true?" Trevor looked at Vanessa, hoping she'd explain. She stared at the floor, silent. Whatever Brett had on her kept her quiet even now. "I heard someone in trouble," Trevor said. "I came to help." "By bringing a weapon." The younger guard moved closer. "Drop the wrench." Trevor set it down slowly. There was no way out, not for people like him. "I want to press charges," Brett said. "This man assaulted me and Miss Crawford." Vanessa looked at Trevor for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful. "There was a misunderstanding. Mr. Walsh heard something and came to investigate. Things got confused. I don't think anyone meant harm. Not the truth, but not a lie either. Frank, the older guard, smelled a rat. So nobody's hurt? Nobody wants to file a report? I want him arrested, Brett snapped. For what exactly? Frank's tone was neutral. Ms. Crawford says it was a misunderstanding. He let the question hang. A formal statement meant police, reports, questions about what Brett and Scott were doing in a women's restroom after midnight. Brett hesitated. Just get him out of here. He's fired. Blacklisted. By tomorrow, every property manager will know his name. The guards escorted Trevor out. As they waited for the elevator, Frank spoke quietly. That was stupid, what you did in there. Also brave. But belief doesn't pay rent. Trevor leaned against the elevator wall. What had he done? By tomorrow, he'd be unemployed. The rent was due in 9 days. Ruby needed new shoes. One moment of trying to do right, and he'd torpedoed everything. His phone rang in the truck. Unknown number. Mr. Walsh, this is Vanessa Crawford. We need to talk. Your friend Brett made it clear. He's not my friend. What you saw tonight, it's complicated. But I'll make this right. When I do, I'll need you to tell the truth about what you saw. The truth is, I'm about to lose everything because I tried to help you. Not always. Her voice was quiet. I'm asking you to trust me, just for a little while. She hung up. Trevor sat in the dark, wondering what he was supposed to do next. The next morning, Trevor drove Ruby to school with a forced smile. She chattered about books while he calculated. $300 in savings. Rent. Due in 9 days. By noon, the call started. Hamilton Tower terminated his contract. 5th Street canceled. By 3 o'clock, 4 jobs lost. Brett Morrison worked fast. Harris showed up that evening with beer and takeout. So you're a hero and an idiot. Ruby stays with me. You too. The spare room's empty. I've got wiring jobs. Pay's not great, but it's something. I can't. You're not asking. I'm offering. She called after everything. Maybe she's collecting evidence. These corporate types don't move until they've got the kill shot. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Odd jobs barely covered food. He gave notice on the apartment. They moved into Harris's spare room. Ruby cried but tried to hide it. School became hard. Kids called her dad a criminal. She came home with red eyes. Vanessa called Thursday of the 2nd week. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Coffee shop on Mercer. The grind. Vanessa sat in a back corner with folders. Thank you for coming. I owe you everything. An explanation. She pushed a folder across. This is what they tried to make me sign. 15% of my shares. Combined with Brett's father's shares, they'd force me out. They blackmailed me with fake embezzlement documents. Trevor opened it. Financial documents. Why show me? I spent 2 weeks proving it's fake. Brett and Scott stole $800,000 over 18 months. Fake vendors. Ghost employees. Take it to the police. I need a credible witness. You already lost everything telling the truth. Testify at an emergency board meeting tomorrow. I still can't work here. If you testify, they go to jail. I can offer you head of facilities management. $75,000 benefits. I need someone I can trust. Tell me what you need. The board meeting took place in Hamilton Tower. Trevor wore his only dress shirt. Brett sat at the far end, calm. Vanessa, what's so urgent? Frank Morrison asked. Embezzlement, fraud, blackmail, and assault by Brett Morrison and Scott Hendricks. The room erupted. Brett went white. Frank turned cold. Proof? Vanessa laid out evidence. Bank records, forensic accounting, offshore accounts. Methodical, devastating. Fabricated, Brett said, shaking. Mr. Walsh, tell the board what you witnessed. Trevor stood. I heard a scream. Found Brett and Scott holding Ms. Crawford, forcing her to sign papers. They framed me when I intervened. He's lying. I lost everything when you blacklisted me. I have no reason to lie. Frank studied Brett. Is this true? It wasn't supposed to go this far. Brett stopped. Get out. You'll hear from the lawyers. Brett left. Scott followed. Vanessa found him in the lobby. Thank you. I know that wasn't easy. Will they face consequences? They will. The evidence is too solid. The board can't sweep it under the rug. She pulled out a business card. My offer stands. Head of Facilities Management. $75,000 a year plus benefits. Think about it. Trevor had never made more than 35. I'm just a plumber. You're someone who does the right thing when it costs everything. That's what I need. She smiled. Talk to your daughter. Trevor found Ruby at Harris's table. Her face lit up. Dad, how was it? Really good, sweetheart. Are we going to be okay? Trevor looked at his daughter. Wild curls, gap-toothed smile. Hope and worry in her eyes. He thought about the choice he'd made. To show Ruby that doing right mattered more than staying safe. Yeah, baby. Better than okay. He pulled her close. I promise. 3 months later, Trevor stood in Hamilton Tower wearing a pressed shirt. Trevor Walsh, facilities director. His office overlooked the city. A team, a salary, health insurance. Not perfect. He still worked long hours. Still worried. But it was solid. Earned. Ruby had stopped getting bullied. The story made local news and changed how people saw him. Ruby walked taller. Smiled more. She got a part in the school play. Talked about becoming a lawyer someday. Harris still came by weekly. You got lucky. Could have gone the other way. I know. But you made your own luck. Made the hard choice. Harris raised his beer. Trevor clinked bottles. I'll drink to that. Vanessa sent an email. Brett and Scott sentenced. 3 years each. Ruby qualifies for our new scholarship program. Trevor filed it away. Proof that sometimes doing right actually mattered. That evening, he took Ruby for ice cream. They sat on a bench watching the sunset. Dad, remember when you told me being good is more important than being safe? Yeah. I think I understand now. Sometimes you have to be brave even when you're scared. Trevor held her close. That's exactly right, sweetheart. The city stretched before them. Somewhere, someone else might be facing their own moment of decision. Trevor hoped they'd choose bravely. The sun dipped below the horizon. Ruby finished her ice cream. Can we come back tomorrow? Sure, baby. I like it when we're together. Me too. Trevor held out his hand. Come on. Let's go home. They walked to the truck hand in hand. The city lights flickered on, one by one, like stars after a storm. For the first time in 7 years, Trevor Walsh felt like he could breathe easy. Not because everything was perfect, but because he'd proven that courage mattered. That doing right made a difference. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, they had each other. They had hope, and that was everything. The next morning hit like a freight train. Trevor's phone started ringing at 7:30. 3 clients canceling jobs, all with the same careful language about going in a different direction and budget constraints. By 8, it was 5 cancellations. By 9, his calendar for the next 2 weeks had been wiped clean. Brett Morrison worked fast. Trevor had to give him that. The man had connections that ran deep through the city's property management networks, and he was using every single one of them. Harris opened his front door. Before Trevor could knock, Ruby already dressed for school with her backpack hanging off one shoulder. The old man's face was lined with concern, the kind that came from seeing too much of life's cruelty. Heard your phone buzzing all morning, Harris said quietly. Figured something went wrong last night. Nothing I can't handle. The lie tasted bitter, but Trevor forced a smile for Ruby, who was already running toward him with that gap-toothed grin that made everything else fade away for just a moment. Dad, can we get pancakes on the way to school? She crashed into his legs, wrapping her thin arms around his waist. Mr. Harris made eggs, but they were weird. He put vegetables in them. Vegetables are good for you, kiddo. Trevor ruffled her wild curls, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. 7 years old, and already stubborn as steel, just like her mother had been. But yeah, we can grab pancakes. Quick ones, though. Don't want you late. Harris caught Trevor's eye over Ruby's head. The unspoken question hung between them. How bad is it? Trevor gave a tiny shake of his head. Not now. Not in front of her. Harris nodded understanding. He had been around long enough to know when a man was drowning, but could not let his kid see the water rising. The pancake diner was nearly empty, just the morning rush stragglers nursing coffee and staring at phones. Ruby chattered about a science project, while Trevor pushed scrambled eggs around his plate, his mind racing through calculations that kept coming up negative. Rent due in 8 days, electricity bill overdue, Ruby's school fees for next month. The truck needed new brake pads. He had been putting it off, but the grinding sound was getting worse. Without work coming in, he had maybe 3 weeks before they started missing payments. Maybe 4 if he stretched things to the breaking point. Dad? You're not listening. Ruby's voice cut through his spiral. She was looking at him with those big brown eyes, too perceptive for 7. Are you sad about something? Just tired, sweetheart. Long night fixing that pipe. He manufactured another smile, hoping it looked more real than it felt. Tell me again about the science project. Something about volcanoes? She launched back into the explanation, hands gesturing wildly as she described baking soda and vinegar reactions. Trevor focused on her voice, using it as an anchor to keep from drowning in the panic clawing at his chest. Whatever happened, he would figure it out. He always did. For her, he would find a way. The first week was a master class in humiliation. Trevor called every contact he had, every contractor who had ever thrown him a job, every property manager who had his number saved. The responses varied. Some were apologetic, some were cold, a few were honest enough to admit they had been warned off by someone with deep pockets. One manager, an older woman named Pat, who had always been decent to him, pulled him aside at a supply store. I don't know what you did, she said quietly, but Frank Morrison's son is making calls. Says you're unstable, dangerous. I wanted to give you a heads up. It's going to be hard to find work in this city for a while. Trevor thanked her and left before she could see how much those words had gutted him. Unstable. Dangerous. The words people used when they wanted to destroy someone without proof. Brett was not just taking away his income. He was taking away his reputation, his future, any chance of rebuilding. It was thorough and brutal and completely legal. By the end of week 2, Trevor was taking whatever work he could find. Odd jobs that paid cash, no questions asked. Fixing a neighbor's fence for $40. Unclogging a drain for $20. Nothing steady, nothing reliable. He dropped Ruby off at school early and picked her up late, squeezing every possible hour out of the day to scrape together enough money to keep them afloat. Harris helped where he could, refusing payment for watching Ruby, sometimes leaving groceries on Trevor's doorstep with gruff claims that he had bought too much by accident. The pride of refusing help warred with the necessity of accepting it, and necessity was winning. Ruby started coming home from school quieter than usual. At first, Trevor thought she was just tired. The extended days were hard on her. But on Thursday of week 3, she came out of the building with red-rimmed eyes and her backpack hanging crooked off one shoulder. Something in Trevor's chest cracked when he saw her face. What happened? He knelt down to her level right there on the sidewalk, other parents flowing around them like water around a stone. Nothing. Her voice was small, defeated, not like his Ruby at all. Sweetheart. Talk to me. She looked at the ground, scuffing her worn sneaker against the concrete. Some kids at school. They were saying things. About you. About how you got in trouble and lost your job and we're going to be homeless. Her voice cracked on the last word. I told them it wasn't true, but they just laughed. They said their parents told them to stay away from me because my dad is dangerous." The words hit Trevor like physical blows. This was what Brett had done. Not just hurt him, but hurt his daughter. Turned her into a target because her father had tried to do the right thing. The fury that surged through him was white-hot and useless. He could not fight gossip, could not punch rumors, could not protect Ruby from the casual cruelty of children repeating what their parents said at dinner tables. "Look at me." He waited until her eyes met his. "None of that is true. You know that, right? I didn't do anything wrong. I helped someone who needed help. Sometimes when you do that, people get angry because it's inconvenient for them, but that doesn't make it wrong. Then why is everyone acting like you're bad?" Her voice was desperate, searching for logic in a situation that had none. Because the world isn't always fair. It was the hardest truth he had ever had to tell her, watching her face crumple as she realized what he was saying. Sometimes people with money and power can make things hard for people who don't have those things. But that doesn't change what's right and what's wrong. It just means doing the right thing costs more sometimes. Ruby wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing tears across her cheek. Was it worth it? Helping that person? The question froze Trevor. He thought about lying, about telling her what she needed to hear. But Ruby deserved the truth, even when it was complicated. "I don't know yet," he said quietly. "Ask me again when we see how it ends." That night, after Ruby had finally fallen asleep on Harris's couch, their electricity had been shut off that morning, making the apartment too cold. Trevor sat in his truck and stared at his phone. Vanessa had called twice more over the past 3 weeks. He had not answered. What was the point? She had made her choice that night, staying silent while Brett destroyed him. Her promises about making it right were just words, expensive and empty as everything else in her world. But sitting there in the dark, watching the battery percentage tick down because he could not afford to waste gas running the engine for heat, Trevor wondered if maybe he had given up too soon. Vanessa had said she needed time, that she was working on something. What if she actually meant it? What if there was still a chance to turn this around, not just for him, but for Ruby, so his daughter could go back to school with her head high instead of facing whispers and pointing fingers? He answered on the 4th ring. "It's been 3 weeks," he said without preamble. "Still complicated." Vanessa's voice was tired, strained in a way it had not been before. "More than you know, but I'm close. I have evidence, financial records, emails, security footage from angles they didn't know existed. Brett and Scott have been embezzling money for 18 months. Nearly $800,000. They created shell companies, falsified reports, forged my signature on transfers, and they built a paper trail that makes it look like I was the one doing it." Trevor felt something cold settle in his stomach. "That's why you stayed quiet. They were blackmailing you." "With the threat of destroying everything I built, yes. My company, my reputation, my freedom. If they had released those documents before I could prove they were fake, I would have been finished. Probably in prison." She paused. "But I found the real transactions, traced the money, and I have the security footage from that night. There's a camera in the hallway that catches the reflection in the restroom door. It's not perfect, but it shows enough. Shows them forcing me. Shows you intervening to help. So what now?" Trevor kept his voice flat, not letting hope creep in. Hope was dangerous when you were this far down. "Now, I need you to testify. There's an emergency board meeting in 2 days, Friday morning. Frank Morrison will be there, Brett's father. The whole board. I'm going to present everything, and I need you to tell them what you saw that night. Exactly what happened. Brett's father owns 40% of the company. You really think he'll turn on his own son? I think Frank Morrison is a businessman first and a father second. And I think when he sees the evidence of what his son has done, not just to me, but to the company's finances, its reputation, he'll make the choice that protects his investment." Vanessa's voice hardened. "But I need you there. Your testimony makes the difference between this being a she said, they said situation and an actual crime with a witness." Trevor thought about Ruby's tear-stained face, about Harris's quiet generosity, about the apartment that would be dark and cold until he could scrape together money for the electric bill, about 3 weeks of watching his life disintegrate because he had tried to help someone. "What's in it for me?" The question felt mercenary, small, but he was past the point of pride. The truth coming out, your reputation restored, and, she hesitated, a job. "We're going to need a new facilities manager for the building, someone we can trust, someone who proved they'll do the right thing even when it costs them everything. The pay is $60,000 a year, plus benefits. Full medical and dental for you and Ruby." $60,000. Trevor's hands tightened on the phone. It was more than twice what he made in a good year, and he had not had a good year since before his wife died. Medical insurance meant Ruby could actually see a doctor when she got sick, not just wait it out and hope. It meant stability, safety, everything he had been fighting for. "Why would you offer me that?" "Because you earned it." Vanessa's voice was quiet but firm. "Most people talk about integrity. You actually have it. That's rare, especially in my world." Trevor closed his eyes, pressing the phone against his forehead. Every instinct screamed at him to be suspicious, to assume this was another trap. But there was something in Vanessa's voice. Exhaustion, yes, but also sincerity. She was drowning too, in her own way. And she was offering him a lifeline if he would just reach out and grab it. "Friday morning," he said finally. "What time?" The emergency board meeting was held in a conference room that probably cost more than Trevor's entire year of rent. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the morning sun painting everything gold. The board members sat around an enormous table, older men mostly, with a few women scattered among them, all wearing the kind of clothes that signaled wealth and power. Frank Morrison sat at the head of the table, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with his son Brett sitting to his right. Scott Hendricks was there too, looking pale and nervous. Trevor stood near the door in his best clothes, khakis and a button-down shirt that were clean but showed their age. He felt completely out of place, like a smudge on an expensive painting. Harris had offered to come with him, but Trevor had refused. This was something he needed to do alone. For Ruby. For himself. For the part of him that still believed doing the right thing mattered. Vanessa stood at the front of the room with a laptop and a stack of folders. She looked different than she had that night. Composed. Powerful. In control. But Trevor could see the tension in her shoulders, the careful way she held herself. This was her gamble, her moment of truth. Everything she had built over decades was riding on the next hour. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Vanessa began. Her voice was steady, professional. "I've called this meeting to address a serious matter that threatens not just my position, but the integrity and financial stability of this company." She opened the laptop, and a spreadsheet appeared on the screen behind her. For the past 18 months, approximately $793,000 have been systematically transferred out of company accounts into offshore holdings. The transactions were hidden in routine operating expenses, disguised as vendor payments and contractor fees. Frank Morrison leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "And you're bringing this to us. Why? Shouldn't this go through the audit committee first?" "Because the audit committee has been compromised." Vanessa clicked to the next slide. Email chains, with names highlighted. Brett Morrison and Scott Hendricks created a network of shell companies to funnel money out. They used my electronic signature, forged on documents, to authorize transfers. And they built a paper trail designed to make it look like I was the one embezzling. Brett shot to his feet, his face flushing red. This is insane. Are you seriously accusing me of— Sit down. Frank's voice was quiet, but absolute. Brett hesitated, then sank back into his chair. Frank's eyes never left Vanessa. Those are serious accusations. I assume you have proof beyond spreadsheets that could be manipulated? Vanessa nodded. Bank records from the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, accessed through legal channels with cooperation from federal investigators. Transaction logs that show the transfers originated from computers, in Brett's office and Scott's IT department, not from my office or home. And testimony from forensic accountants who traced every dollar. She paused. Plus, security footage from 3 weeks ago, when they attempted to force me to sign over additional shares to legitimize their theft. The room went silent. Brett's face had gone from red to white. Scott looked like he might be sick. Vanessa clicked again, and grainy security footage appeared. The hallway outside the executive restroom, time stamped at 11:27 p.m. The angle was wrong to see directly into the restroom, but the partially reflective door surface showed distorted images. Enough to see 2 men holding a woman. Enough to see the struggle. That's not— You can't even see anything clearly, Brett stammered. That could be anyone. The timestamp matches building security logs showing that you, Scott, and I were the only people on that floor. And there's a witness. Vanessa gestured toward Trevor. Mr. Trevor Walsh, an independent contractor who was working on a plumbing emergency that night. He heard me scream and intervened. He saw exactly what you were doing. All eyes in the room turned to Trevor. He felt pinned by their attention, by the weight of what Vanessa was asking him to do. This was the moment. Tell the truth and potentially get his life back, or stay silent and definitely lose everything. Ruby's face flashed through his mind, not crying, but laughing, the way she used to before all this started. Tell them what you saw, Vanessa said quietly. Trevor stepped forward. His voice came out rougher than he intended, but steady. I was finishing up a burst pipe repair on the 15th floor. About 11:30, I heard a woman scream. It came from the executive restroom. When I opened the door, Brett Morrison was holding Ms. Crawford against the counter with her arm twisted behind her back. Scott Hendricks was standing behind her with papers, trying to force her to sign something. She was clearly in distress, had visible bruising on her wrist. When I told them to let her go, Brett threatened me, said his father owned the company and he could have me blacklisted. Then he called security and claimed I had attacked them. Brett erupted. That's a lie. He broke into a private business meeting with a weapon. A wrench, Trevor interrupted. I'm a plumber. I had my work tools, and it wasn't a business meeting. You were assaulting her. My son wouldn't— Frank started, but Vanessa cut him off. Your son spent the last 3 weeks systematically destroying Mr. Walsh's livelihood. Every contractor in the city has been warned not to hire him. His daughter has been bullied at school because of rumors your son spread, all because Mr. Walsh saw something he wasn't supposed to see and refused to stay quiet. She pulled out another folder. I have documentation of every call Brett made, every contact he leveraged. It's witness intimidation at minimum, possibly criminal conspiracy. The silence that followed was suffocating. Frank Morrison's face had gone very still, the kind of stillness that came before an explosion. He looked at his son with an expression Trevor could not quite read. Anger, yes, but also something like grief. Tell me she's lying, Frank said quietly. Tell me you didn't do this. Brett's mouth opened and closed. Scott had his head in his hands, shoulders shaking. The truth was written all over both of them, in every line of body language. Every second of silence that stretched too long. I want them arrested, Vanessa said. I want full restitution of stolen funds, and I want Mr. Walsh's name cleared publicly. with the understanding that anyone who continues to blacklist him will face legal action from this company. Frank stood slowly. He looked older suddenly, the weight of his son's betrayal aging him in real time. "Security," he said into the phone on the table. "Send someone up. We have a situation that requires police involvement." He looked at Brett, and his voice cracked just slightly. "You've destroyed everything. You know that." Brett's composure finally shattered. "Dad, I can explain. We were going to pay it back. It was just temporary. You forged documents, embezzled nearly $1 million, assaulted your CEO, and then tried to destroy an innocent man's life to cover it up." Frank's voice was flat, dead. "There's no explaining that. There's no fixing it." The police arrived within 15 minutes. Trevor watched as Brett and Scott were led out in handcuffs, Brett still trying to argue his case, while his father stood silent and broken at the window. The board members were already shifting into crisis management mode, talking about press releases and damage control. Trevor felt disconnected from it all, like he was watching it happen to someone else. Vanessa found him by the elevators. She looked exhausted, but relieved, like someone who had been holding their breath for weeks and could finally exhale. "Thank you," she said simply. "I know that was hard." "It was necessary." Trevor pushed the elevator button. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about your company, the damage this will do. We'll survive. Companies always do, one way or another." She handed him a business card. "The job offer stands. Facilities manager, $60,000 a year. Benefits start immediately, if you want it." Trevor looked at the card. Heavy stock paper, embossed lettering, the kind of thing that belonged in a different world than his. But maybe, just maybe, that world could be his now. "I want it," he said, "but I need to make something clear. If I see something wrong happening, I'm going to speak up. Even if it's inconvenient, even if it costs me the job. That's who I am." Vanessa smiled, and it was genuine. "That's exactly why I'm offering it to you. We need people who can't be bought or silenced. Apparently they're rarer than I thought." She extended her hand. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Walsh." The handshake was firm, professional. Trevor rode the elevator down, feeling like he was in a dream. His phone buzzed. A text from Harris. "How did it go?" Trevor typed back quickly. "Tell Ruby her dad's not a bad guy after all, and we can turn the electricity back on." 3 months later, Trevor stood in the lobby of Hamilton Tower with a clipboard and a radio, coordinating the evening maintenance crew. The job was strange. Part logistics, part management, part problem solving. He still fixed things when needed, still got his hands dirty, but now he also had an office with his name on the door and health insurance that covered Ruby's dental work. The other day, she had come home from school excited because a kid had asked to be her partner for a project. The whispers had stopped. Trevor's reputation had been rebuilt. Carefully and publicly, with Vanessa's full support. Harris stopped by sometimes to bring coffee and pretend he was just in the neighborhood. "You look good," the old man said, taking in Trevor's new work shirt with the company logo. "Respectable." "Feel like an imposter half the time," Trevor admitted. "Like someone's going to figure out I don't belong here." "You belong anywhere you earn the right to be. And you earned this." Harris squeezed his shoulder. "That girl of yours, she's proud of you. Told everyone at the grocery store yesterday that her dad is a manager now. Wouldn't shut up about it." Trevor felt warmth spread through his chest. Ruby's pride mattered more than anything else. More than the salary, more than the benefits, more than the vindication of being proven right. She had seen him fall and get back up. She had learned that doing the right thing sometimes meant suffering for it, but that the suffering did not make the choice wrong. Brett Morrison and Scott Hendricks were awaiting trial, out on bail, but facing serious prison time. Frank Morrison had resigned from the board. his reputation permanently tarnished by his son's crimes. The company had recovered most of the stolen money and was slowly rebuilding its image. Vanessa had been profiled in 3 business magazines as a CEO who had stood up against corruption in her own ranks, her stock rising both literally and figuratively. Trevor's role in the whole thing had been mentioned in some articles, the plumber who witnessed a crime and testified despite personal cost. A few news outlets had wanted interviews, but he had declined. This was not about being famous or celebrated. It was about being able to look his daughter in the eye and know he had done right by her, taught her the lessons that mattered. One evening, after the building had emptied and the cleaning crew was finishing up, Trevor found himself back on the 15th floor. The executive restroom had been renovated. New fixtures, new tile, as if replacing the physical space could erase what had happened there. But Trevor remembered. He would always remember that moment of choice, standing in the hallway with a wrench in his hand and fear in his throat, deciding which kind of person he was going to be. His phone buzzed. Ruby's face filled the screen. A selfie she had just taken at Harris's house, making a goofy face with dinner on the table behind her. The message read, "When are you coming home? We made spaghetti and it's getting cold." "Love you, Dad." Trevor smiled and typed back, "On my way. Save me the garlic bread." He locked up his office, turned off the lights, and headed for the elevator. The Hamilton Tower would be here tomorrow, with all its problems and possibilities. But tonight, he had a daughter waiting and garlic bread getting cold, and that was all that mattered. As the elevator descended, Trevor thought about the question Ruby had asked him that day outside school. Was it worth it? He knew the answer now. It was worth it. Not because everything had worked out, though that helped, but because he had shown her that some things were more important than safety and comfort. Courage, integrity, the willingness to stand up even when standing up meant falling down. Those were the things worth sacrificing for. Those were the things that made a person into someone their daughter could be proud to call Dad. The elevator doors opened. Trevor walked out into the lobby, through the gleaming marble entrance and into the evening air. His truck was parked in the employee lot now. He did not have to hunt for street parking anymore. Small victories, adding up to something bigger. He climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. Ruby was waiting. Harris's spaghetti was getting cold. And tomorrow, Trevor would come back and do the work that needed doing, knowing that he had earned his place here not by keeping quiet, but by refusing to stay silent when it mattered most. That was worth everything.